Okay, so our second and feature video for this evening, we're going to talk about rotational and sinking movement, okay? Why it's important and why, under most conditions, to have maximum efficiency is absolutely vital to how you're doing your technique, okay? So we'll start with sinking. Most martial arts have some concept of sinking somewhere along the line. You see different variations and even different amounts of detail. Chinese arts, there's all kinds of sinking movements coming from our very core of our bone marrow. A lot of arts in the Japanese arts, you use your weight a certain way. If you read, frankly, if you read, probably still one of the best books on punching by Jack Dempsey, written, the heavyweight champ. He basically, his whole concept of hitting hard revolves around sinking, okay, and how you use your weight. So it's vital. But what does it really do? Okay, sinking grounds us. Okay, so a lot of the dynamics of energy remain plausible in different circumstances. Electricity, you have to have a ground, right? And you have to have a connection, all right? It's the same thing in martial arts, okay? Generally speaking, when you drop your weight, okay, the timing has to be so that your extension is simultaneous or close to it, unless you're incorporating another movement, okay? So for example, if I'm simply throwing a punch with a step, as my foot hits, my hand should come out, okay? On the other hand, I might whip that punch, so I might step with the foot and use some rotational movement, okay? So regardless, okay, in all cases, there's a sinking movement. It can be done in such a way that it literally is almost not even noticeable. It's internal, but it puts you in a position where now you have a connection, so that when you are putting forth your work, your effort, okay, you have stability and it will go into the target, okay, and not back and destroy your structure. Now, let's look at, there was actually a karate guy who did a very nice video. I don't remember his name, but I want to give him credit. I'll try to remember and post it in the comments. But he was coming at this from a karate point of view, but he makes it works very well for our understanding, and I'll show you what he did, okay? I'm just gonna let my dog out. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. He was talking about when people punch from the horse stance, okay, and they're bringing the hand back, okay, that they go past this point, and you see what it does to my structure? And he's absolutely right, okay? If I'm actually technically throwing this series like this, I can't really put this here, or it throws my stability, okay? Now, what can you do about that? Most people, and I believe his approach was doing this too, what they might do is I might shorten this distance, okay? So they might come and do something where well, let's see, I'll start here, and when they bring it back, just to here, okay? But that doesn't really address that, because really what you have to do is you have to drop that elbow, okay? And that grounds you. So when you're here, now when you come here and come down, okay, boom, as you sink, your energy is grounded, okay? I don't punch like this, but I'm just showing you the idea here, okay? So when you come back here, this drops, okay? Now, there's another aspect to this. When you start to incorporate, and he was very good about this as well, he spoke about this, but part of the whole understanding is rotational movement here, okay? When you create rotational movements, okay, now you're taking your energy and you're making centripetal force, okay? Now, here's the thing about centripetal force. You will observe this with almost any sort of a drill. If you simply use dead weight, you need to apply more weight in order for any sort of penetration to occur, okay? When you drill something or what the case may be. Okay, if you have a top, we used to have these old tops when we were kids, you'd wind them up, they will skitter around until they find a point where they can stabilize and turn around on. Okay, it's the same idea. Your rotational movement, therefore, when you're doing this, it requires at some point that you also sink. Okay, boom. Okay. So if I'm making a movement, let's take that same thing here, okay? When I'm coming here, boom, okay? This is a different way of doing it. It doesn't quite apply properly to karate dynamics, but you're doing it in a way that you're also subtracting from your movement with this distance from here to here. But if you really profile as you do the movement, okay? Watch this punch, okay? And come here, then it actually can kind of work, okay? Although you probably want to have a foot in front and back. But now you have the movement is here and grounded at the last point through the sinking, okay? So on rotational movements as well as linear movements, you have to always ground your weight, okay? And they both depend on doing that with the proper timing, okay, and feel, all right? So for example, something linear can be very subtle, okay? It can be something, I'm only moving an inch to strike here, okay? It can be something very fast, okay? Where I'm just using this, okay? But the same principle applies. I'm sinking, okay, as the last point of that rotational movement, okay? Now, when you do these movements with any sort of a semi-rotation, not a total rotation, okay? Total rotation is circular movement, okay? So I'm here, boom, okay? This is a total, okay? But if I'm using something where I'm doing half of that movement, okay? Semi. Watch my back leg here. Watch this knee, okay? When I do this, this knee has to be grounded, okay? If I turn this knee, all that turning subtracts from my power, okay? Because the power is in the rotational movement here, okay? This is what's known as a segmented movement. I'm using the top half of my body to do the movement, okay? This has to be stable and act as a base for that movement in order for it to be effective. This knee cannot move in the direction of the strike, okay? In this particular type of movement, which is different if I'm doing this as a straight type of a strike, okay? It's a little different. My grounding is different, okay? So these are some things to keep in mind when you practice these movements, okay? What you want to practice is when you're doing a linear, and let's call it unsegmented. Let's say we're using our whole body at once to do the stepping punch, okay? The main thrust of your power is in the action of the hand hitting the target, the foot hitting the ground, and the body turning and grounding at the same time, okay? If that sounds complicated, it just means boom, okay? Everything should happen at once. Boom. Doesn't mean it has to be slow, okay? Okay? But that's the timing, okay? If you're doing a totally circular movement, then your power resides almost chiefly in the rotation. So grounding doesn't become as much of a necessary factor, okay? You can strike as you move, pretty effectively, okay? If you're using, that's also a whole body unsegmented movement. If you're using a segmented movement with semi-rotational movement, then you have to have a base for that movement, okay? If I'm here and I'm doing something like this, which is absurd for this, but makes our point well, when I'm doing this, boom, I have to sink and drop this down to ground, okay? Pow, pow. If I'm doing something like this, my back knee has to remain in the same position and cannot turn. All right? Try to practice those habits. They're important, okay?